James, can you drop the screen now, please? Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first webinar after our break. We hope you all had a splendid summer and survived all the hot weather, the travel chaos, and everything else, which is pretty pertinent because this morning's theme is transport, and in particular, public transport. Even as dementia progresses, it may become necessary to travel for family reunions, weddings, medical appointments, conferences and meetings. And with a little preparation and realistic expectations, these journeys can be pretty easy. People with dementia can travel safely. However, a recent survey showed 60% of people with dementia don't use public transport unaccompanied or accompanied because they find it too daunting. We've got a great panel to help us today with the subject and probably maybe propose some solutions. And I'll introduce the panel as we go along. I just need to take this moment to remind you that these webinars are designed, delivered, and presented by people with lived experience. But we rely on your input to make this happen. So any suggestions you may have for future webinars can be mailed to 3ndwg.org. We encourage you all to post questions or comments in the text boxes, as if you raise your hand, we can't see you. We can't respond to individual difficulties, but we may be able to signpost you to help. Now, that's enough from me. And I'm going to introduce my first speaker is Tommy Dunn. Tommy who's from the People's Republic of Liverpool, has done some sterling work with the transport. I mean, as an ex-train driver himself. I'm right to say that, Tommy, am I?
Train driver, train rail compliance manager, and the train space manager for the whole of the Northwest.
There we are. Well, good morning, Tommy, and welcome to our webinar.
Good morning. Okay, so I'm Tommy Dunn, and I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's just nearly coming up to 10 years now. I was initially misdiagnosed with bipolar, so I was accidentally diagnosed with dementia because I didn't think there was anything wrong with my memory. But it turned out that I had young onset dementia rather than bipolar, so it was a good surprise to be told you didn't have one, but you had the other. So anyway, access to reliable and affordable safe transport is important for people with dementia to maintain contact with friends and family and help prevent social isolation, just as Nigel stated. But getting transport right for people living with dementia brings with it many positives to wider society, and this is what's overlooked. Because there's increased numbers of people can travel to shop and spend, so there's a benefit to businesses and the economy. So people living with dementia would also like to go out and spend money. I know my wife likes to spend money, but she likes me to go with it. But they need transport to get there. It's no good having these great groups for people to go to, you know, support groups here and there. If they don't have transport that can get them there, so they may as well not have it. In fact, it's actually worse knowing it's there and you haven't got the transport to get there. But they also need the reassurances that the journey will be as stress-free as possible. As Nigel said, we've been working through our transport group with the various transport providers to address this situation. And we've carried out surveys and conducted personal interviews with people living with dementia and carers across the whole of the UK to find out what the problems they are facing. Nigel stated before, when a person has to stop driving, it can be a major life event, bringing about a loss of identity, and for some, the first tangible outcome of aging. For years, the person living with dementia may have been the only person who drove. Then suddenly you have the person with dementia and the family carer requiring to use public transport, which, if you live in a town or city like I do, it's great, you know, because you've got good transport systems. But if you live in the rural areas, it can lead to isolation. And in some parts of the cities anyway, the bus operators stop up there operating after 7 o'clock, you know, because it's a non-profitable route. Now, we all know that dementia is not a visible disability, and it may not be immediately apparent to those around them that we have dementia, and this can lead to problems with travelling. And it's a well-known fact that at least a third of people living with dementia live on their own. So it's important when they use transport, it's a positive experience. Now, we meant in our pre-talk, we mentioned the lanyard. You know, so you can use these lanyards at the airports. And with my friend Paul, my fellow peer Paul, we've been doing some free training for the security staff at the airport to show them the problems that people living with dementia have. You know, but you know, old people with dementia can't go around the airport and train all the staff for free, you know, because it's not a viable thing to do. But likewise, if you're traveling with train, you can ring up a train operator and request assistance. And at most major stations, they have an assistance office which you can go into, where they can arrange for you to be picked up and taken to your train coach. But that's only at major railway stations. You know, it's not a lot of these unmanned stations that a lot of us go to. Everyone knows that loneliness is a killer. Now, we all have carbon monoxide alarms in our homes to detect the silent killer, but we don't have the alarms for the other killer, which is loneliness. So local governments should be encouraging pooling and sharing of resources to help fill gaps in local transport provision and working together with the voluntary sector. People living with dementia, access to healthcare must be improved by better linking of health and transport services. Public transport providers should design their services with the older transport users in mind, with people with hidden disabilities in mind, using technological improvements and customer insight to improve their experiences. You know, there's a connection between travel and quality of life. When people are unable to travel, it's often due to illness, low income, or isolation. Evidence shows that the journey itself, rather than the end result, can be beneficial to well-being. So it's important that when you're having that journey, it's a positive experience. Traveling, importantly, as part of the general public rather than separately, can reduce isolation and increase opportunities for interaction. It's beneficial for well-being to have the opportunity to travel when you want to, rather than simply when you need to. Good transport is important for everyone, and as the proportion of older people in our population continues to increase, this transport must not be exclusive to the young or able-bodied. Transport can be difficult for people living with dementia to navigate alone. Travellers with dementia may have difficulty with routes, dealing with money, as I do, or interacting with other passengers. Many transport operators and local authorities issue assistance cards, which record details of needs of the individual. You show the card privately to the driver or other travel staff as a means of asking for assistance. Yet, many journeys combined using different forms of public transport across 2 or more local authorities. So standardisation and promotion of card schemes could improve many people's confidence using public transport and avoid the need to carry a range of assistance cards for different types of transport and areas. But it's important that transport staff only read the symptoms that some of the forms of dementia take and don't mistake some of the symptoms for being drunk. I've been accused of being drunk and I've been a bit confused, even when I haven't had a drink, which is a bit upsetting. Like, it's all right, you've had a drink, but when you haven't had a drink, it's upsetting to be accused of having had a drink. What a lot of people don't know is that every train operating company has to have a disabled people's protection policy, which has to be updated yearly and available for the members of the public to see. We have difficulty with new environments, so include the person living with dementia in the planning and itinerary where possible. How many train operating companies have come to you to update their disabled policy? I'm glad that Nigel's on the national view for that, so hopefully he might be the lone voice in the dementia world out there. So it's important when you're traveling to have an emergency plan in case the carer has an accident. I mean, not a lot of people take into account that a carer can actually have an accident or take ill during the journey. So someone who requires, help dressing or bathing will probably have sufficient trouble even traveling short distances. So what you need to do is try a short run or similar transport to check that the person with dementia travel capacity if travel. And I've had this lately, and I was wondering why I wrote this a few months ago, and it happened to be in the car. If you're driving with a person living in a car, use the child locks on the door so the person does not try to get out of the car while moving. I've had this terrible urge to open the car door when I'm going along, and I don't know what it is that just come. And I'm glad that those locks are on, because I was probably would have been able to open the door. But it's an urge that just comes over you, like, it's a terrible thing. Now, as we said, all airports have disabled persons policies, so just contact them and get a lesson off your doctor's stating that the problems you would have in travel should be stress-free. And if you inform the operations when you're traveling, it makes it a lot better. But safety must always be the top priority, both for the person living with dementia and the carer. Now, headphones can be used to replace alarming or distracting noises with music or radio shows that are familiar and comforting. How many times you've been on a train and go bing bang, and you jump, So a very important consideration that's often overlooked is how I'm sure there's some carers here, are doing. So traveling with someone with dementia is tough, even for an experienced carer. The most useful quality of the travel companion is the ability to stay calm under all circumstances. If the person living with dementia can't travel, technology can help them enjoy significant events or visit with relatives. And there's some amazing organisations out there dedicated to helping people with dementia have travel. This group could be one of those that makes the biggest difference of all. But the main thing that sticks out in all transport providers' policies is that they are all weighed down towards physical disability. Hidden disabilities are often not covered in a way that their staff or the travelling public would understand. Mobility is central to the whole of society. It allows people to connect with places and shapes how we live our lives. Even now, due to a lack of awareness and training, there's still issues among passengers and transport staff that can make transport difficult for people living with dementia and other hidden disabilities. We need to install confidence in the people living with dementia in order to encourage them to use public transport, taxis, the ferries and the airports. We need to work with transport providers to ensure that their training reflects the problems that people living with dementia and other hidden disabilities experience when using public transport and the airports. Getting it right for people living with dementia will benefit society and the economy as a whole, as they regain the confidence to get out into society and spend money. We all know that there's more than 920 people living in the UK with dementia, a number expected to rise to over 1 million, according to the Alzheimer's Society, by 2024. And the vast majority of people with dementia are aged 65 and over, so it accounts for 880,000 people. Dementia is not an inevitable part of aging, and it's not a disease in its own right. It's an umbrella term. It describes the symptoms that occur when the brain is affected by certain diseases or conditions that cause the gradual death of brain cells, and this leads to progressive cognitive decline. It should not decline to our ability to travel safely and confidently on public transport. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. I think some very important messages there about equality, access to services. I understand that you've worked particularly with the bus drivers in Liverpool, is that correct?
I worked with the bus drivers, and they was shocked at their attitude when you get on, because I tell them the story of when I go and put my bus pass on the thing, and I walked off, and I got the oi. So I walked back, and the bus driver nodded to me. So I nodded back to him, and he nodded back to me, and I nodded back to him. And then he started tapping the machine. I said, I don't know what you want. And then I said, I don't know what. And he said, put it on there. So I don't wait. So I put my bus pass back on. And then he said, just shook his head like that. And I said, is it okay, man? So I didn't know where it was. So, you know, funny enough, for the next year, every time a bus came, my heart used to pound because I used to get anxious then thinking, my bus passes another way. Another situation where I sat on one of the disabled seats and there was a young couple sitting on the long seat. And the girl said something to the fellow, and the fellow looked at me and he said, excuse me, you can't sit there. So I said, why not? He said, they're for disabled people. I said, I am disabled. Got a disabled pass. He said, you don't look disabled. I said, you don't look stupid.
Well done. Tommy, I mean, the message comes clear to me that if we get it right for dementia, we get it right for everybody. Is that correct? Am I correct in saying that?
That is 100% because,
yeah,
you know, it's a great opportunity. They don't realise it. If they've got it spot on for people with dementia, they'll have it right for everyone. Because every one of us with dementia is unique. So if you've got it right for us, you've got it right for everyone.
Yeah. I guess I'm going to let Tommy go now because he's got another appointment, which I guess is tea time somewhere.
No.
But thank you so much, for Tommy, for your insights. It's been a pleasure to hear your experiences of the work that you're doing with both rail and bus transport. Thank you very much, Tommy. Chris, question.
Yeah, just before you go, Tommy, I think it's important that people know that dementia is not all about memory, and a lot of us have sensory issues and problems with sight, with vision, with hearing. For myself, I have problems with loud noises, and very often when you travel on public transport, it is very noisy. So I tend to distract myself by playing games on my phone or something like that. But a lot of people, including, you know, the operators of the trains and buses, don't realise that we have these other sensory issues. They think it's just about our memory, and it's not.
You're exactly right, Chris, because this is something that we need to educate not only the train operators, but the general public. If my dementia was all about my memory, I'd just get a dictaphone and a notepad and I've cured me Alzheimer's. I wouldn't need anything else because I remember everything. It's about my spatial awareness and my cognitive skills that have gone, you know. And, you know, people don't understand what that actually means. So, you know, we need to educate everyone about what that actually means. And when we've done some training with transport staff and we showed them what that actually means, they get it, they go, wow, you know, wow, you know, this, and then they go, oh no, that makes sense because my grandma does this and does that. And she says, I thought she was messing when she says, who am I, or stuff like that. You know, so when we're educating the transport staff, we're giving them a life skill. It's not something you can just use at work. It's a skill that they can take out into the great big world. And that's what everyone's got a duty to do. You know, I feel as if I've got to help make things better for my peers to come. You know, you're very great when I got diagnosed. A lot better now, but we're still here. Eight years down the road, talking about problems with transport. We shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And of course, I think you can make the argument that good transport is a human right as much as.
Of course,
yeah, you can make that argument. You know, it's covered in the Equalities Act, but you know, they're supposed to do these things.
But you know, if people are getting out and about, you know, it's having an impact on their health. They're not staying in the house. There's no social isolation, so they don't get not getting as depressed. So then they're having to take tablets for depression more and more, and you know that has an impact on the health budget. So the health and transport providers should be working together, you know, because they could save millions and millions of pounds if they work together and put a transport system in that benefits everyone.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Thank you very much again, Tommy. And I'll leave you go now to your next appointment. And be in touch soon on another project I've got. Cheers, mate.
Lovely to see you though. Bye.
Yeah. Our next speaker is Julie Hayden now. I had the pleasure of spending 3 days with Julie in London at a ADI conference. And I learned a lot about getting around where you have, as well as dementia, you have a physical disability. Don't want me saying that, Julie, do you? I learned a lot. How narrow that, even narrower that makes your world, or it can, and how probably, you know, with an added an issue. So, Julie, good morning to you.
Hi, Nigel. Yeah, thanks for that. The fact is that our dementias cover a wide variety of disabilities. There are, of course, the cognitive aspects, but other effects come into play which impact on our daily lives. These can include the physical and also the sensory symptoms that were being discussed there by Chris. And these need to be taken into consideration when we plan our journeys. Access to public transport should be a right for all. And in order to address these concerns, the transport companies have developed passenger assistance policies and services to enable greater equity. However, for many years now, this service has been in decline and failing us, and more so since the pandemic. As Nigel was saying, due to severe balance problems as a result of my dementia, I'm reliant on the use of a walking frame and I'm unable to use stairs. As a result, when taking anything other than local journeys, I always book assisted travel, giving them plenty of notice, a full description of my needs, and the reasons for the level of request for help. But it's easy for staff to see me with a frame and to assume that I can walk any distance. Yet, if I need to change trains or cross a large busy station, I need to transfer to a wheelchair. I walk at a snail's pace, and even then I need to stop at regular intervals. I have arthritic knees, so my ability to stand for periods of time is restricted. And combined with the sensory effects of a busy atmosphere and the sound echoing off the station walls, I can quickly become disorientated. It could be worse. If I were a horse, they would have shot me by now. Yet for reasonable accommodations to be made, allowing me to roam our beautiful country, I need this level of help. And maybe a second person if I'm travelling with luggage. We do not ask for all this fuss just to make a grand entrance. It's necessary for our work as well as to enable us a social life and to meet with family. I would love to be able to arrive at a station and hop on the train and be the first instead of always to be the last to get off. And getting to the loo to not feel like I'm tackling an assault course. But I accept that life has changed now. I don't like asking for help, yet sometimes I need to swallow my pride and do so. Despite the above extra planning on my part, the following are some of the problems that I've encountered since we were released from the last lockdown at the end of September 2021. no assistant staff to meet me at the station, being forced to walk painfully across major stations due to my requested wheelchair being refused, no staff meeting me to help me off the train at my destination, despite reminding the guard to phone ahead to let staff know my seat number. This, by the way, led to my being unable to disembark, and I actually ended up in a different part of the country. Only funny as part of a Monty Python sketch. Despite repeated requests at a London station from my booked assistant, being ignored and then treated like a difficult customer because I complained, I actually missed my train on this occasion and ended up in almost total physical collapse and in a state of disorientation. There being little or no awareness of the meaning of my sunflower lanyard, even though it has a young onset card attached to it. The above are unfortunately not applicable only to myself, but are shared among friends and colleagues. In a recent meetup of 5 friends with dementia from across the UK, 4 of us had major difficulties with our journeys. And although assistance needs to be booked centrally, any complaint against a lack of support has to be addressed to individual stations and rail companies. Let's work together as people with disabilities, transport companies, charities, and governments to ensure that this basic necessity becomes less of an ordeal. After all, our money is taken readily enough.
Thank you, Julie. Can I, having sort of spent those 3 days in your company, much was traveling across London from where we were staying to the venue, and I think that in itself was a big challenge for both of us, really. You know, the lack of taxis and, you know, waiting around, and when they did turn up, having to explain where we were going and all the rest of it. But what you highlighted there was people's inability who work for transport operators to be kind, to be understanding. Is that a true reflection of your experiences?
It is. It's so. I don't know how well. This is why prior to our meeting, I was trying to establish from Tommy, who's got more experience than I have, as to how and what type of training assistant staff are given, if they're always given training, because what I come across are, it seems to be that they don't understand, and they think that by asking for extra assistance that I'm being difficult, and that, you know, why this woman's got a walking frame, so why is she asking for a wheelchair? Well, and if I could, I'd get into the station, I'd make it to my train, and I'd quickly dive in and out of the stations myself. But it's because they don't understand about the fact that I can only walk a short distance and then start to get really wobbly. And then, as Chris was feeding back about the effect of you're in a big echoey station, the sound is then reverberating back and crashes in on your brain. That kind of makes your brain fuzz come on, and it gets you disorientated really quickly. So there's a need to get across the station quickly so you can get onto the train and feel sort of situated where you are.
Yeah.
So.
Do you feel anxious every time you travel?
Yes, and increasingly, because things have got worse, I now find myself thinking before I book a trip that the nerves start straight away. Instead of it being, it might be a business trip, or it might be one from which is supposed to be a social one. The occasion where 5 friends met up, Chris was actually involved with that. It was the Zoomex gathering, and I'd been through such an amount of trauma through lack of support every single step of the way, even though at each point I was double checking with assistance, please can you make sure there's someone to help me at the next part, and it not being there. But by the time I arrived at our destination to meet the rest of the ladies, I was actually physically shaking, and I didn't stop shaking then. And for the rest of the weekend we were spending together, because I knew I had to face the self-same thing on my return journey, and I just couldn't relax because of fears of what was to come.
Yeah. I mean, it says a lot for your resilience that you continue to do that, Julie, and, you know, kudos to you. I've been in your company and I know you don't take anything lying down. As a couple of taxi drivers in London will attest to, in a certain port or in a hotel. So you know, it's quite formidable, and there's a lot of talk about adaptive behavior and all the rest of it, but also there should be a recognition of the courage that people show by doing things which other people take for granted, and what's happened to us can happen to anybody. Chris.
Just a comment from Jean in the chat box to say thank you so much for sharing your experiences, Julie, and I know that people will be shocked at hearing some of the things you've endured, but I know that you're a fighter and that you still keep going. But we do need to improve things for transport for people living with dementia. But you shared very openly and very honestly, so thank you.
Yeah, I put in the chat box as well for all the participants information on where the local rail user group networks are. So if you've got an issue with it, it's where you can get engaged with your local user group and talk about the things that's very similar to what Tommy's doing. And be part of the conversation and force your way in and say, you know, I won't be silenced. You know, you will listen to me. I have a right to travel safely. I have a right to travel with comfort, and I shouldn't be made anxious by the fact that you can't provide the service that you say you do. And I think that's really important. Thank you, Julie. Again, you know, I've been with you, so I know that. That people don't underestimate you at their peril. So well done, you. Our next speaker is Eamon. Good morning, Eamon.
Good morning.
And he's going to talk about. I think you quite successfully negotiate rail travel. Am I right?
Yes, I'm one of the lucky ones. I had your early onset dementia. They took my driving license off me immediately. I haven't used a bus because there isn't any available in my end of Kent. So I had a mobility scooter. But then I got involved quite heavily with the Alzheimer's Society, and I'm involved to go up to London at least once a month. I got 2 this month alone. So I sat down and planned my journey carefully. I get a lift to Sevenoaks Station to where I go to London Bridge. It's then 2 tube trains to Tower Bridge and then a 5-minute walk to the headquarters. On getting to London Bridge Station, I asked one of the employees for the lift down to the Northern Line station. Politely enough, the gentleman took me where the lift was and said, was I all right? And would I like him to accompany me down to the station? To which I said, no, thank you, I'm fine, but thank you for the offer. I then transversed both tube stations and then met another employee at the other end to say, could I have a lift up down to the top of Tower Bridge? To which he said, yeah, it's just up this corridor, and then you can go up to the top section and go out. Now, I was very lucky that they were very useful, and having done the journey once, I now know where the lifts are, how to get back to them, and how to get to and from. I can understand the people's disillusionment about the amount of noise. When it comes to the point of getting off the train, I'm nearly always last. I can't walk very far. I can do about 200 yards before I become in pain with the lower back. That is one of my main issues at this moment with my dementia. So I normally walk a little while, sit on a seat, walk a little while, sit on a seat. So I'm normally last off the station. I get some funny looks off the guards sometimes because it looks as though I'm avoiding coming out. But when I explain to them that I have a mobility issue and they couldn't fit my mobility vehicle on their train, then they are more understanding and compassionate. It takes me a lot longer to walk from London Bridge to the escalators or whatever else I'm going to use as well. And I find them a little bit daunting because my sense of balance has deteriorated. And some of them are pretty steep, and it is a bit unnerving to go up some of them, especially the one at London Bridge. It can be very difficult. So I eventually found where the lift was for that and used the lift. But all in all, so far, at the moment in time, I've had some positive outlooks on my journeys, but I can see it progressively getting worse as the deterioration on my balance and my memory progress. And therefore, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not I continue to go to London on my own or without a chaperone. Hi, Chris.
Hi. It's interesting what you said there, Eamon, because only last week I travelled from Cardiff to Eastbourne with a friend of mine who has dementia, but her dementia is much more severe than mine is. So we booked assisted travel, but there seems to be huge problems with the underground system in London because they're not allowed, I don't think, to help you with your bags. We both had roll-on, wheeled suitcases. And when we got to Paddington, we had to go up a flight of stairs, across the bridge and down another flight of stairs. So I asked for assistance, and the gentleman who worked on the underground said, if you get on this train, on this platform, it'll go one stop and then it'll turn around and come back in the direction you want to go. This was the Circle Line. We ended up going 20 stops on the Circle Line all the way around instead of the 7, which resulted in us missing our connecting train. And fortunately, our ticket was one that we could catch the next one. But if you're booked on certain trains and then you miss your train, you then have to pay for another fare. And those sorts of things aren't taken into account. And there's no way that I could have carried mine on my friend's suitcases, up a flight of stairs, across the bridge and down the flight of stairs. We weren't shown a lift, and that was only last week.
I can understand where you're coming from on that. I tend to plan my journey so that I arrive early. I'm supposed to get the 9 o'clock train from Sevenoaks. I get the 8:30 to give me a safety margin so I can get across the stations and do various things. There is more of a crowd, but at this moment in time, they don't faze me at the moment. I can just stand my own or sit as I can if I find a seat. So at this present moment, I am fairly mobile in the respect that I can get to places, but it's not at a particularly fast pace. It's more at a snail's pace. So I plan ahead to make sure that I've got plenty of leave room for a missed train or a missed tube, so I can get across and get there on the time I am expected. I'm one of these people that punctuality is required. I find it something that I've had all my life, and it still instills in me a need to get there on time. So I make the effort to plan ahead.
I agree, and with all the best will in the world, we had just under an hour to get from Paddington to Victoria, and we still missed our train. So I thought we'd planned ahead as well. Thanks, Nigel.
No, it's okay. I mean, one of the things that Eamon's brought up is this need to plan your journeys you know, and factor in, I guess, a little bit of a mini disaster along the way, which is going to cost you time. But you see, if you miss your train through no fault of your own, I'm given the wrong way on a tube is no fault of yours, then you just walk up to the station manager and say, look, you know, this guy put me on the wrong, I need the next train. And I doubt very much whether they'll stop you getting on, but that's not really the point. I've often said that the tube is the place where you need the most assistance of any transport system, be it overland rail or bus, because it is absolutely horrendous. It happens so quickly. The atmosphere is terrible. It's overbearing. And those signs flash by at the station so quickly, don't they? So maybe TfL need a visit from a few people with dementia to say, oi, you know, mate, up your game, up your game. And all the major tube terminals like Paddington, like King's Cross, like, you know, have an assistance window there where people can actually physically help you get to stations, because you're quite right. I mean, you know, if there are no lifts available, or the lifts are crowded, or you don't know where they are, getting suitcases down 3 or 4 flights of stairs and then across 2 or 3 station entrances is exhausting. It's exhausting. You're not going to do it. Thank you, Eamon. I'm going to mop things up now, and we've got a fair bit left. So, James, can I have the first of the slides, please? Okay. So what we discussed today, well, we discussed the challenges to transport. And my experiences with the rail user groups and talking to people on Saturdays and Sundays, as Eamon knows, that and other focus groups that I have run, is that navigating to and from high street stations in particular is difficult for people living with a diagnosis. And the train companies themselves find it quite difficult, because they find there's nobody there to support people who are lost outside, getting on a bus and help them finding where to go. There's no link up. I know it's locally in Swansea train station. If you say, can you tell me where the next bus is to say where I live, they turn around and say, oh, just stand there. I think it's that station over there. Getting lost in train stations, especially if the night changes. You know, there's new stations, there's a break from routine. You know, particularly after COVID, some station layouts may have changed. Getting on and off the correct train. Now, most of the train companies, I mean, it's all over the newspapers these days, and the train strikes, and what the RMT and ASLEV and the rest of them are fighting for. They're fighting for not only just pay, but the security of the jobs. Just imagine if there are no more ticket offices left. Just imagine if there's no more ticket offices left. There's nobody to help you plan a journey. There's no one to help you, to tell you when and where the connections are. This brings on to the second point, struggling with the move to digital. You know, booking your tickets online. How many of us feel confident about using apps like Move It or Rail Finder or things like that, where you can book tickets online and finding the best deals? Like the banking system, as the banks are disappearing, people like talking to people who work for companies, don't they? Like going in there and being dealt with as a human being. And the vast majority of people I've spoken to say that usually the best part of their journey is where they book their tickets and they're given the best deals. A lot of people are struggling, not wanting to access online timetable information, because it's very confusing. And booking online is quite difficult because you have to give your card details, and then the cards are not sent to you because sometimes you have to go to the ticket machine with a code that you sent. And sometimes that doesn't work. And if there's no ticket officers, where do you go after that? A lot of people still think passenger support is limited and are less likely to be aware of positive developments. Well, the rail companies tell you that they've, and tell me that they've increased their disability services and passenger assistance on the stations, and I personally have never had a problem with it. But you've just heard from Julie where there is a problem, so maybe they're not fully aware of where these issues occur. Next slide, please, James. One of the major issues that people tell people, well, all people with or without dementia actually is challenging, is digital access and support. People are struggling to move to digital, i.e. finding information, booking and online, and staying up with new and helpful changes. You can book assistance online, and I can ask Julie to comment on that in a minute as to whether she thinks that's feasible. But people still think passenger support is limited and less likely to be aware of positive developments again, along the fact that now you can book passenger support online. Next slide, please. We can't really talk about transport unless we talk about the frontline staff. These are the people who get you on the trains. And sometimes their lack of experience is down to lack of training. Sometimes you have people who haven't had that much experience in very responsible positions, which all positions, I guess, are responsible in dealing with a customer. If a customer needs support, who is abusive versus special needs, how would staff determine between the two? Abusive may be brought on by anxiety. It may be brought on by the fact that they feel unhappy with themselves. It may be the fact that they are panicked because they don't think they're going to get there. And this is treated very similar as somebody with special needs. In other words, there is no calming down effect. It's just, let's get you on the train as soon as possible. And are people really vulnerable, or are they cheating the system? By that, I mean, you also, those horrendous TikTok videos. Well, I suppose if you didn't, there were a series of TikTok videos showing young people pretending to need assistance at an airport to beat their queues and saying, oh, this is an easy scam, everybody doing it. Well, a way around this is to access support and to encourage people, and I encourage everybody who's in the travel on the transport system to make use of passenger support and be aware of positive changes, i.e. changes to travel, changes the way we can travel. Chris, before the meeting started, said she felt that she'd like a position where if there was space in first class, she could be put there, and that's a sensible approach. It's all down to the train manager, and it's all down to revenue. But by and large, I think that usually there is space in first class. And of course, you are compensated. You can be compensated under the new rules. If it's a fault of the rail company that or part of the rail system, different companies have different responsibilities. But if any of those fall down, of course, you can make a compensation claim. I put in the chat box the web address for rail user support, which you can get to in your area, and work your way into it. Go along to the meetings and say, look, I want to talk. Next slide, please. So what opportunities have we got? Well, informal support, a culture of kindness to all customers. You don't need training to be kind, do you? Just be kind. I've included some retail in here as well, because I think it's also important that when people are confused in shops, that they have the same kind of experience in that. Specific training and guidance, you know, a little touch of kindness, a little touch of understanding, a little touch of sympathy for the person who's making the journey or who's undergoing that experience at the time. Specific training for customers with dementia. Dementia Friends training at least for some staff. I'll tell you a little story. I'm not sure that always works. I was on a train once and sat in the disability seats, the disabled seats, as I normally do. And I thought, oh, I'll show the train guy, the ticket collector, my card, just to, you know, so that I'm not. So I showed him this may, you know, I have memory issues card, and he sort of looked at the card, looked at me, looked at the card, looked at me. And I noticed he had a Dementia Friends badge on. So I looked him up and down, or he looked me up and down. And he said, oh, you got dementia, have you? I said, yeah. He said, you don't dress as if you have. And I thought to myself, well, there you go. You know, 5 years into my diagnosis, I didn't realize there was a uniform. In shops in particular, it's quite important, and I include transport in this, that if there is somebody with a specific experience of dealing with people with dementia, then staff should be encouraged to point them towards people who receive specialist training. I've used the term pharmacist here, but if it's in the transport, somebody who's done one of Tommy's courses or been able to attend Dementia Friends course. Passion support while traveling. But, you know, customers with hidden disabilities are less to use this. They tend to feel ashamed that they're not going to be considered as being disabled. I always use it, and I've never had that problem, and I encourage everybody to do this exactly the same. If you're traveling with dementia, go to passenger assistance and tell them, and ask to be pointed to the right train, and ask them if they can make the guard aware, or the train manager aware that you're on the train, in case you need a bit of extra help. Printing personalized timetables at the station. If you ask, they'll do it. Or they should do it. Wear a sunflower lanyard at all times and explain to people what that means. Ideally, staff to support people getting lost in bright jackets at the station, or extra staff on the shop floor, keeping a lookout for vulnerable customers. Training people on the job if they're not adequately assisting vulnerable customers. In other words, interacting with these people and say, look, you're not doing a pretty good job. Newer staff not understanding the subtleties of communicating with the customer's dementia if it's informal, and support techniques that a more experienced staff may have learned. James, can you take it away now? These are not the answers, but what they are is they're a guide, and we got a little bit of time left, 5 minutes or so. Kindness in society is not hard to do. Being kind, being aware of someone's needs, and taking that little extra step to make vulnerable people feel safe, to make vulnerable people's lives a lot bigger, and above all else, to be safe. Because if you're traveling alone on a train at night, particularly if your train travels through a big town when the pubs are closing. You know, you need staff on that train to help you. Chris.
Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Yes, I'm just looking at the chat, and Parveen Khan has put in, really good to listen to you all. I hope things get better, but we must push the transport decision makers to think about dementia. Staff should be aware. And also there's a question put in the question Q&A from Melvin Brooks to say, we should have got the train companies here today and the bus companies to answer our problems. Maybe they could have given us answers and solutions.
Well, that's a great suggestion, and we'll probably return to this and actually get the rail user, the rail companies to tell us what they're doing. We're fast approaching time now. My thanks to all the participants, all the panelists. Well done. My thanks to everybody that turned up and had listened to us. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll come to our next one, which is on the, get this right now because I sent people the wrong day. It's on the 19th, and it's on pre-diagnosis experiences of people living with dementia. So you can put that in your diary. I would remind you again that these are all designed by people with a lived experience. And we rely so much on your support, and I can't thank you enough today for turning up. And all it remains for me to say is thank you so much. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Eamon. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Tommy, if you finish, you can hear me. And we look forward to seeing you again. So if all the participants can log off and the panelists just stay behind for a few minutes, that'd be great.